Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 81, Superboy-Prime, as selected by our president-level patron, Matt. Superboy-Prime is a character that's been on our master list from the beginning. I think it's safe to say. I know Doc has been waiting for this character for quite some time.
Yes!
And Matt has asked that we bring him back do an episode on him rather, because Jeff Johns has decided to bring him back from the dead. He hasn't been in a DC comic in quite some time. I think his last appearance was pre-Flashpoint. So there was a lot of concerns and questions over what was going to happen to Superboy-Prime. But Jeff Johns has said, no, I know you thought he was gone, but I'm going to bring him back. And he's just as pissed off as ever. And with good reason.
Oh, yeah.
So before we jump into that, want to thank everybody who's watching us on the live stream. We are using Get Vocal to live stream this to Facebook and YouTube. So you can subscribe to our YouTube channel or our Facebook fan page and check us out there. We record our episodes at this point pretty much on Saturday nights. Typically between 7 and 8 o'clock is when we get started, based on whenever I can get my son to fall asleep. So thank you to everybody who popped in last week for our recording session on Laura Kinney and our Patreon review of The Wicked and the Divine, which is now live for all of our Patreon fans. So if you can go over to patreon.com/capesonthecouch and subscribe, you can check out our review of The Wicked and the Divine, Volume 1, The Faust Act, and listen as Doc and I spend about 15 minutes just really lavishing extensive amounts of praise on it because it's so damn good. But anyway, this week we are giving our weekly podcast shout out to Seequels with 2 E's. So every week, 3 hosts review direct-to-video sequels of childhood favorites, and they do a compare and contrast with the originals. It's a really interesting hook because, at least for me as a Blockbuster employee, and yes, I'm absolutely dating myself when I say that, I saw so many direct-to-video sequels of countless movies, and I was like, who actually watches these? And it's also sad to say that you can go to their website, seequels.com, seequels.com, and they have the box art for each of the direct-to-video sequels. And looking at the box art, I recognized every single one of those movies because I walked past them in the various sections of my Blockbuster, where I worked for far too many years. Back again when Blockbuster was still a thing.
Wow, that is amazingly pathetic.
And there it is. I was waiting. Thank you, Doc. Thank you for never disappointing in your ripping of me. Thanks. Make me feel so much better about myself.
Don't worry. We know fully well that I support you 100%. Otherwise, why would we be doing this show?
Excellent point. So, Superboy-Prime. Let's just dive right in because there's quite a bit to unpack here. Superboy-Prime was created by Elliot S. Magin and Curt Swan in DC Comics Present number 87, November of 1985. So, in order for me to properly explain Superboy-Prime, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of the multiverse. For those of you unfamiliar with DC Comics, you had Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3, etc. Each Earth was a slightly different variation on the others, homes of various heroes and villains. Earth 1 was like the original DC universe. Earth 2 was the Silver Age. Earth 3 was the Mirror Universe with the Crime Syndicate, and so on and so forth. Earth Prime is our world, the world in which no superheroes actually exist. So that's just sort of the background for that. And so Clark Kent is the adopted son of Jerry and Naomi Kent. But you go, what? So they adopt him. What they don't know is that he is actually a superhero, that he is, in fact, the Earth Prime version of Kal-El, sent off the planet Krypton. He landed in a field and was adopted. They gave him the name Clark as a sort of, ha, 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 we're going to name him after Superman. Because again, an Earth Prime, there aren't superheroes, or I should rephrase, superheroes exist in comic books. So all of the DC history is known to the residents of Earth Prime as fictional stories. And that comes into play later on as we get through the rest of this. So Earth Prime, again, is our world. And so superheroes are the same way that we think of superheroes. They're in stories, they're fantasy, but they're not real. So Clark Kent, in this version, actually ends up manifesting superpowers when he's about 15 or 16 years old, and Halley's Comet passes overhead and it triggers these powers. And he has all of the same powers as your typical superhero, as your typical Superman, Superboy: flight, invulnerability, heat vision, yada, yada, yada. So the story that he's created in is in the lead up to Infinite Crisis. Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Because those really are two different things.
Yes, I realized my slip up as soon as I said it. I caught myself. I'm sorry. Crisis on Infinite Earths. So he joins the rest of the heroes in fighting. Earth Prime gets destroyed, and he's very upset about this. So he opts to instead help Kal-El, which is Earth 2 Superman, defeat the Anti-Monitor, because he says, my world, I can't save my world, but I can help save the rest of the multiverse. And so he joins Kal-El in fighting the Anti-Monitor. So he ends up in this paradise dimension alongside the Superman and Lois of Earth-2 and Alexander Luthor Jr. of Earth-3. Again, Earth-3 being a mirror universe. Their version of Lex is actually the only hero, and he has a child with that universe's Lois Lane, and they have Alexander Luthor Jr. So it's these four people in this paradise dimension and nobody else for years. And so the way that Superboy-Prime chooses to spend his time is using crystals to watch reality or memories of his world and all the things that he doesn't have anymore. And as you can well imagine, this starts to make him a little angsty because, again, he's about 15, 16 years old when all of this goes down.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Alex says, oh, by the way, in the new merged world, your family died in a car crash, your girlfriend isn't around, et cetera, et cetera. He starts needling him a little bit. So he really gets angry. And this is, if ever there was a statement that I'm about to make that encompasses why, because comics, it is this one. He punches the wall of reality. No, I'm not making that up. He punches the barrier to reality. And this single act, which now occurs, this is in the lead up to Infinite Crisis, which is about 2003. So almost 20 years later, this act creates a ripple effect of changes in reality. And this really allows DC to get away with all the retcons and the changes that they'd made to their characters in the 20 years following Crisis on Infinite Earths. There were a lot of things that didn't actually get cleaned up, that they ended up muddying the waters a bit. So they said, this all got changed when Superboy-Prime punches reality. So this is how we're going to sort of hand wave all the changes that we've made and are going to make. So he breaks out of this barrier, this paradise dimension, along with Alex. He destroys the Justice League Watchtower, and he proceeds to beat the ever-loving piss out of Conner Kent, who is the new Superboy as of, again, about 2003, 2004. He believes that Conner is wasting away the name and goodwill of Superboy, and that he is what Superboy-Prime should have been. So he wails on Conner, and naturally all of these heroes show up to defend Superboy or to defend Conner, and Superboy-Prime kills and or beats them within an inch of their lives.
Yeah.
He is not holding back at all.
Yeah.
Because if you really think about it, he's got all the same powers as Superman.
Yep.
So if you think about if Superman were to become unhinged and just not hold back, he could do a lot of damage. Well, that's what Superboy-Prime does. Superboy-Prime does a metric ass ton of damage on these heroes. So eventually he gets defeated and he's banished to an alternate dimension within the Speed Force because the Flash shows up and helps use the Speed Force to banish him to this alternate dimension where he's being held captive with a red sun, which is, of course, sapping all of his powers. Except he breaks out of that. And now he's wearing a suit of armor that contains a yellow sun, so that's now boosting his power levels. So he ends up fighting Conner again, and he kills Conner after they destroy Alex's vibrational tuning fork that would impact the multiverse.
Yeah.
Again, why?
Okay, I'm gonna
because comics.
Well, yeah, you say why? Because comics. Reading the comic itself, it's what the tuning fork is. The tuning fork is part of the edge of reality that includes the husk of the anti-monitor to begin with. Alexander Luthor Jr. is badass in his own right. He set this up because he knew he could, as you said, needle someone like Prime. He could do a lot of things in the background, very similar to any Luthor that we know. But he also had superpowers, so he could hold his own, and no one would really question him if he positioned himself the right way. It's one of those Scooby-Doo situations. He almost got away with it if it weren't for you other meddling heroes.
All right. Well, again, I was trying not to delve too much into the story of Infinite Crisis because that's not the purpose of the show, is to give a full
I know, but you got to remember,
rundown.
like, I don't want people to think that I'm just the straight foil to your expertise. Like, I'm a comics fan myself. Just throwing that out there.
And your expertise is much more rooted in DC, which is perfect for a character like Superboy-Prime. So I'm glad that you're able to provide some much needed input on this. So not only does the destruction of the vibrational tuning fork kill Conner, it also results in the merging of the several Earths because, again, DC is trying to clean up their various messes. So now Prime heads to Oa, where he kills dozens of Green Lanterns. And this is after, by the way, he breaks through a 300-mile wall made of the combined willpower of the Green Lantern's rings. He fights through this wall and then just goes to town. I mean, he's killing lanterns left and right. So then he ends up getting attacked by the Superman of Earths 1 and 2, and he kills Earth 2 Superman, the same one that he was stuck in the Paradise Dimension with for many, many years. So Superman of Earth 1, Kal-El, Kal-El, as opposed to Kal-L, to clarify. So Kal-El, E-L, knocks him out, and he's taken into custody by the Guardians of the Universe. Then, during the Sinestro Corps War, he ends up getting freed, and he joins the Sinestro Corps just because he's really pissed off and he wants to get back at the Guardians. So one of the Guardians sacrifices themselves to destroy him, but all it does is infuse him with Owen energy. Then he gets sent to the 31st century, where he encounters the Time Trapper, and the Time Trapper sends him to the 31st century.
Right.
And this is where he discovers that history has largely forgotten him, because this is now 1,000 years after he's existed. And he's looking at a museum of Superman's accomplishments and so on. And he's like, I'm just a footnote? No. Mm-mm. You're going to remember my name. And he brings together a whole bunch of villains. Then he ends up being revealed to be the Time Trapper himself, because comics. And so So Prime ends up attacking the future version of himself, the Time Trapper, and this paradox sends him back to his Earth Prime, which apparently was not destroyed. Now, again, we go back to the idea that Earth Prime, there are no superheroes, and except for the ones that exist in comic books. Well, everyone on Earth Prime has read all of the comics, and they know everything that he's done. And now nobody wants to deal with him. Nobody wants to touch him. His girlfriend doesn't want to have anything to do with him. His parents take him back because they feel badly for him. And he ends up living in his parents' basement. And he goes on message boards talking about how amazing and powerful Superboy-Prime is and how he's really the greatest villain the DC universe has ever known. And one of these days, he's going to come back. This is DC's way of absolutely taking the piss out of every single fanboy who has bitched and moaned about Superboy-Prime for 30 years. It's kind of brilliant from an editorial standpoint, but it also just seems like, and I know I'm going to take a lot of flack for this, especially in light of recent news events. This sounds like the kind of thing Zack Snyder would do.
Oh, dear. Oh.
Yeah, I went there. I took shots.
Okay.
I will not be ordering HBO Max, nor will I be watching the Snyder Cut. I don't care how long it is. It's not going to be a good movie.
Alrighty.
Shots fired.
Uh-huh.
So he ends up coming back. He ends up acquiring powers, and he gets transported back to Earth 1, where he gathers a whole bunch of other villains, and they go after the Teen Titans, and the Teen Titans overpower him and imprison him in the Source Wall. And this is, again, going back probably about 15 years.
Uh-huh.
And so then Flashpoint happens, Rebirth happens, the New 52, all of this, and Superboy-Prime is not mentioned. And so DC fans are going, I guess they've sort of wiped Superboy-Prime out of existence. Not really thinking about him anymore. Nope. Recently, he's been revealed to be trapped in the Monsterlands. Now he's broken out and he's seeking revenge on Shazam. Don't really know why he's going after Billy, but apparently that's who he's going after. So this recent turn of events is what led Matt to say, hey, you know what? Do an episode on Superboy-Prime. I think it's going to be hella interesting.
Yeah.
So having said all of that, and that's, I think this is one of the longest backgrounds we've done on a character in quite some time.
And yet, I don't think you could shorten it, because all of that is necessary to explain just how wild a life he's lived and why he would have some of the issues you're going to mention.
Absolutely. And that's what I was just about to say, that we needed to do all that background in order to delve into the issues. So let's start, I guess, almost chronologically. Let's start at the very beginning, or in his first real turn to villainy. And let's look at the facts here. He was never given any time to process his powers. Like the next day, the day after he gets his powers, Superman shows up and says, I need your help because all of existence is going to be wiped out by this anti-monitor. I need you to come with me so we can help battle this villain. And initially he's like, hey, you're Superman. Oh my God, I have powers, all this great stuff. He's like this wide-eyed kid, which is a totally natural and realistic thing to consider. But he never really gets the time to learn how to control his powers, learn how to use them. He never gets time to process all this, because in a matter of days, he gets powers, finds out Superman is real, goes to battle a villain that is threatening all of existence, and sees his life and everyone he knows and his entire planet gone. It's obliterated in a span of about 2 days. And he's 16 when all of this happens.
Yep.
I don't care who you are. That's going to mess up your head.
Yeah. Yeah, you got it. So if you want to bring it to something that can happen in our lives, it's the equivalent of, let's say you have your parents that have provided you with everything you've needed so far. No major traumas. I'm not going to that extent. And honestly, it may be what a lot of people are going through right now. This COVID-19 pandemic hit. Both parents lose their jobs. They don't have any savings. although there's been protections for housing, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to follow the rules the exact same way. You're now being put in a situation where you may not be under stable circumstances. Let's say, though, that you're talented. You've been in school. People notice that you do certain things well. I'm going to actually use an example of someone that is well known in history now for negative things as to how his life ended, but this was a kid that before he moved out to California on the East Coast was known as an incredibly talented rapper that had that wide-eyed wonder because he saw that he had certain skills that he wanted to develop, and he just wanted to get his mixtapes out there, and he just wanted people to give him a chance. He wanted to get into acting, and nobody really thought much of him because he looked so scrawny. And he ended up turning to people that weren't exactly the best. And he ends up involved in things that, quote unquote, may or may not have been gang related. And it ends up with him dying early. I'm talking about Tupac.
I know exactly who you were talking about.
Okay, well, I figured you would, but that doesn't mean everybody would. So I made sure I said the name. Yeah, I made sure I say the name out loud. And I think the parallel there is that there's nothing wrong with the idea that sometimes you get great things thrust upon you, and then at the same time, a lot of turmoil and a lot of negative things can happen at the exact same time. Unfortunately, we don't get to pick and choose when and how certain things happen. And with Prime, so much was out of his control. It's a matter of the locus of control. It's not just about his powers. It's about the fact that society at large was crumbling. And it meant that everything that he thought he knew was going to change on a dime. So now you have to put together the skills that you learn to cope, which as a teenager, no offense to anybody that's listening that's in this age bracket. I'm not trying to insult you, but you don't quite have them just yet. That's just being real. So from that standpoint, what do you have? You have your reactivity, you have your impulsivity, you have your high level of energy. You have some of your naivete, maybe some of your cynicism, if you're, more hanging out with that kind of crowd. But no matter what, the point is you don't have the experience. So you're just going to do everything as hard as you can, as fast as you can, in a way that you hope produces results that people are going to notice, because then at least you're leaving an impact. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to leave a positive impact. You can leave a negative impact, but you're not going to know until you try. And in this case, it wasn't just whether or not he got to try. It was, you got to save the world. You got to save the universe. You got to save multiple universes. The magnitude just keeps going higher and higher. That's not fair. And that sense of injustice for anyone is going to lead to the idea that, well, it could lead to just pure, what we call anhedonia. Like, you just don't have any interest anymore. Like, what's the point? I'm grateful that Prime doesn't go that route. He still has a major interest, but that amount of pressure, it led him to crack. That's really what it came down to. I'm not saying it's his fault, but it is his problem.
You've been saying that a lot lately.
Because
that's
I think
the
that's
third
what people,
episode in a row that's come up
because especially with what we're dealing with now, that's what people need to realize. Because right now, I hear it on a daily basis. So many people are blaming themselves for things that are beyond their control. And that's just the wrong way to go about it. So hopefully if I say it enough times, people will get a different idea.
Well, wish in one hand, the other, and tell me which one fills up first. But no, I think that's an excellent point, and I think it segues perfectly into the next issue, which is then this angst that he has. And I think that if there's a word that can be used to summarize Prime, especially early on, it is angst. He's taken away from his entire family and support system, and this horrible tragedy happens to him. And again, much like you're saying, it's not his fault, but it is his problem. The way that he chooses to deal with this is by reliving his memories and focusing on what happened over and over and over again. And I don't care who you are. If all you do is dwell in the past, you're never going to grow. You're never going to mature as a person. And so he gets mired in this negativity of, I couldn't save anyone from this universe. I'm a failure. I'm terrible. I shouldn't be here. Da 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 da. And he's got 3 people that he's stuck with, all of whom he just met. The only one who's really friendly to him is Alex, because Superman is too focused on the fact that Lois is dying. And Alex is, as we said earlier, being a Luthor in that he's looking for the angle. He's trying to figure things out. He's like Louie from the DuckTales.
I knew you were going to say that because that's the only way you would have had that reference.
Well, he is.
Yeah.
DuckTales reboot is awesome. So he's got this angst over being taken away from his entire family and support system. Again, it's similar to the issue we were just discussing, but there's got to be a better way for him to process that, but he doesn't. And that's what leads to the jealousy and the rage, particularly against Conner Kent.
Oh, yeah. The idea that you have one vision for the world, you have one vision for your life. And as you said, someone not of his doing has made it very clear that he can relive every previous moment again and again in a traumatic fashion, because that's what it is. That's what so much of PTSD is based on, the idea that you are reliving something that has happened and that you will never be able to change. You can't even begin to fathom what's going on in your life right now, let alone think about a different way to handle current circumstances. Because in a way, you survived that negative experience. You survived the destruction of the planet. You were able to handle the idea that all of this is lost. So that's a quote unquote success, the fact that you survived. But obviously, that's not the way things were quote unquote supposed to be. So from that standpoint, how do you fix it? You try and make everything around you exactly the same, but obviously you can't do that. So what's your outlet? And for someone his age, it comes out, you said rage. It doesn't have to be that extreme for most of us lay people, but anger, anxiety, panic attacks. Yeah, that's how we usually see it. And that's going to lead to acting out. Some people get into fights more. Superboy punches reality. Okay. Still makes the point, though. And there is a part that I wanted to mention specifically when he is under the surveillance of the lanterns. When he's in that bubble, in other words, when his tantrums are under control or he's in restraints when a child is going off that I see sometimes, he does something that's self-injurious. He literally carves the Superman logo into his chest with his own finger. He makes it clear that that is who he is and that is the way things are going to be. And as a psychiatrist, my first thought reading that and seeing that was, are you telling that to the lanterns? Of course he is, but more importantly, you really, really wanted to get that message into yourself. How insecure do you have to be to do something like that? To make sure that you always have your self-brand. I'm not talking about tattoos. That's all well and good. I'm talking about that type of self-injury. He could have just as easily carved a few other letters around the S and put loser, because that may have been how he was feeling and he needed to get that out somehow. So from that standpoint, you could see that anger and rage isn't just about the damage that it does to other people. It's what it does to yourself. And there is no one to buoy that. The only people that are around now are either people that want to manipulate him or the people that want to save themselves because he's doing so many destructive things. And we see that with people that have had so much loss at such an early age. So from that standpoint, I don't think it's that out of the ordinary for someone in that circumstance to act that way. It's just painful, not just for that person, but for anyone that really sees it and cares as a professional when someone's gotten to that level. And I think from that point forward, I know we still refer to him as Superboy-Prime, but he established from that point forward that he's basically Superman, but in a much more grim and destructive way.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring up the Superman, because there was a period in which he was referring to himself as Superman Prime, largely because there was a legal battle over the Superboy name with the rights with the Siegel and Schuster estates and so on. So they were like, well, we can't call him Superboy-Prime, but we still need to use him as a villain. So we'll just call him Superman Prime. Also because when he got hit with the Owen energy, apparently it aged him up, so he was no longer a boy. So I guess that's sort of how they got around it. They cheated a little bit. But the thing that I want to bring this to is the last point. And it's this notion that he is an extremist. He only sees things in black and white. And I find that stunningly shallow for a character that can view the entire light spectrum. But he has X-ray vision. He can see anything he wants to, but he only views the world in black and white. And he feels that because he could never be praised for doing anything, then I might as well just be the villain that they all think I am. And so he embraces that mentality wholeheartedly. And I think that, again, ties into the immaturity and the angst. But that extremist mindset isn't doing him any good, and it certainly isn't doing anybody else any good.
Well, it allows for an ability to conserve mental capacity. When you think about what he must go through and process between the losses, the disagreements with people that he considered at some points to be his allies, the idea that whenever he has a thought that he wants to put his stamp on the world or the universe or universes, and the typical reaction is, we need to stop you at all costs. Like you said, he really throws himself into that. And if you view every interaction as a threat, you don't have to hesitate. You don't have to wonder about whether or not what you're doing is right or wrong, because we're back to that basic need of survival. Regardless of how the circumstance came about, you are now in a situation where the other person is trying to stop you. So all you do is try to win. It's the type of thing that you'll see in highly competitive circumstances, but does that mean that you have to throw out all other ethics? I'd like to think that most rational adults would say no, that there are boundaries, there are limits. But when you take the Superboy-Prime approach, there are no limits. You can do anything you want, whenever you want. And the worst you get is that people don't like it. But you don't care that they don't like it because you were going to get rid of them anyway. Unfortunately, there's the problem that you can't disconnect your emotions from your other goals. And as I alluded to earlier, it's not as if he doesn't have those emotions still. He still wants that adulation. He still wants the praise. He still wants the love. He still wants all of it. And yet, because he's decided to throw himself all in on the idea that he's going to be hated, he at times is willing to look at accepting the idea that attention is going to take the place of actual love, and admiration. So it doesn't matter. It's almost like a shock jock. You don't care whether or not people are enjoying or agreeing with what you say or disagreeing with what you say. As long as the ratings just keep on going, you're just going to keep spewing things out.
Well, I think it's interesting that you bring that up, that he does still have all those emotions, because when he gets transported back to, I believe it's, I'm trying to remember when in the story this is. I think this may be during the final Crisis Legion of Three Worlds, but he gets a Black Lantern ring.
Mm-hmm.
And he's convinced that he's going to die. And the ring actually cycles through every color on the emotional spectrum that he feels, because he still has love for Lori, his girlfriend, and his parents. You know, he's obviously got anger, he's got jealousy, he's got everything, including hope.
Yep.
And the ring actually burns out because the total sum of his emotions is so powerful. And because he cycles through all of the emotions so powerfully that it burns out the ring. And that at the end of it, his girlfriend Lori shows up, and she's holding him, and she's got a Black Lantern ring, and it's on hope. So there is a glimmer of hope inside Prime. It's just tamped down after all of the stuff that he's been through. And somebody asked Jeff Johns, the writer, they said, do you think that he's irredeemable? And he said, it's kind of a 50-50. I don't recall the exact quote, but it was just the notion of whether or not somebody like Prime could ever be considered a hero. And I don't know what it would take for him to get there, and I don't know that they ever will get him there, because I think they're milking him for the villain role for all it's worth. To me, Prime is akin to somebody that we did an episode on not that long ago. He is the Maker. He is Ultimate Reed Richards. Slightly different, but the same notion of, we're going to take this heroic character and we're going to put him through the ringer emotionally. But for these choices, any hero could be villainous. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah.
So I think it's from a storytelling perspective, I think it's very interesting to see what they've done and the choices that they've made with Prime. I don't know how many fans are out there calling for a redemption angle. Not being a DC fanboy or DC reader, would be very curious to see if at some point maybe this new storyline that they've reintroduced him to is going to lead to a redemption. Because I love redemption stories. I've always sort of just gravitated to them because I think it can be very compelling if done correctly. I'll put it that way. Mm-hmm. Some redemptions are very heavy-handed and just done without any organic growth. But I think if it's done properly, and I think Jeff Johns is certainly a talented enough writer that he can pull it off. If it's done properly, I think it could really be something special. But I guess we're just going to have to wait and see where that takes us. But right now, where it takes us is a break for, we're going to plug a couple shows, and then we come back, we will get into treatment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey, my name's Paul, and I'm not an animal expert.
I'm Donna, and I'm not an animal expert either.
And together we do a podcast about animals called Varmints.
Every week we pick an animal, do a bunch of research on it, and bring you some interesting facts about that animal.
But we don't stop there. We talk about that animal in movies, TV, and other pop culture.
And we talk about whether or not that animal would make a tasty dish, and how intelligent we think it is on the scale of 1 to 10.
It's exactly like one of those fancy PBS nature documentaries.
Except with more poo jokes.
New episodes go live every Thursday wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Or you can visit us at blazingcariboustudios.com.
Varmints! Varmints! Ich bin ein
Science!
Cannabinoids, genetics, coronavirus, dogs. This is Petri Dish.
Science!
We're a science podcast exploring complex subjects with clarity and evil humor.
Join the scientific revolution.
Join Petri Dish, dropping every Monday on anchor.fm/Petri Dish.
Hi, I'm Meredith Finch, and you're listening to Capes on the Couch.
Welcome back. In-universe treatment. Yeesh.
Yeah, so this is what I call the kitchen
Yeah,
sink.
I'm not even going to touch this one. I'm just going to let you go because I honestly don't know what, if anything, you could do.
Yeah, so this is what I call the kitchen sink. And what I mean by that is you take anything that has slowed this dude down and you put it all together. So you make sure that you have some lantern powers available. You make sure that you have the positive support within his own realm of someone that he considers to be a calming effect. So if that's his girlfriend, great. You also throw in the idea that, you know, maybe himself in a different timeline might be able to talk some sense into him. You just throw everything you can at him and see what sticks. Because I'm not going to lie and say I'm going to be able to ration with this guy. He gets so angry so quickly that anything that he considers to be a slight and I'm toast. So I'm not even going there. It's more like, all right, let's make sure everybody else is safe first. And then when he's either exhausted or immobilized or not even sure what type of being he is because he's in a different dimension, let's then try and have a conversation. So for anyone that's going to wonder, is Doc, even coming close to addressing this on some sort of psychodynamic level? Nope, not at all. I'm just thinking of anyone I can to distract, delay, defer, delegate, all of it before I get my hands not on him, but just even within earshot of him, which, by the way, doesn't even matter because he has super hearing. But the good news with Prime is that it's been shown he gets easily distracted. So I'm hoping that all of that stuff thrown at him will just wear him down to the point that I can just talk a little bit and say, hey, I'll actually pull the Dr. Phil. How's that working out for you?
Let me tell you something, son. What you need to do, you need to sit down with your girlfriend and you need to have yourself a real conversation because going around and just punching people, that dog won't hunt.
Oh, dear.
I was trying to think of some corny Southern ass expression that he would use. Why'd you even have to bring up Dr. Phil, man? Now you're just making me mad. I don't like him. I don't care for him any. Be that as it may.
I have my issues with Dr. Phil for professional reasons and different things, but I'm not getting into that because I don't need to get massively flamed by those that are bigger fans of him. Nothing personal against Dr. Phil.
Okay, so out of universe, I think the corollary would be maybe somebody who lost their family at a young age and they've maybe been sent to a foster home where they were not really cared for. There's a negative environment and they don't feel that they've got a strong support system. They're not feeling a lot of love, and they are responding to this by lashing out, by attacking others, by attacking themselves. We have the self-harm that we can point to. I think there's a lot of real life scenarios that we can draw a corollary to Prime without using the superpowers. Right. So I'm curious to see what your response would be for... Because I don't think you would go the kitchen sink route.
No, not at all.
Somebody real.
No, I don't
but
think
I'm very curious to see what methods you would use for somebody like a real life Prime.
Well, I kind of hinted at what I thought could be an example of someone who, even if all of these things are happening, even if the person doesn't realize it, that doesn't mean that there are things that haven't been tapped in terms of either potential or, to be honest, they don't have to be quote unquote talents. I don't want to make it sound like that dramatic that, oh my goodness, all these things are wrong, so you must have something that overwhelms and overshadows all of the bad things that have happened. No, I'm not talking about those types of fairy tales. But when I reference Tupac, I do think of, and it's, if you can still get the album, it's not Tupac himself. There are poems, there's a lot of different artists on it, but it's The Rose That Grew from Concrete. And just that image itself says a lot. And I think that's what we're talking about here. The idea that even if you've lost everything else in your life, either it was taken away from you, or maybe you even shunned it. Maybe you pushed people away for emotional reasons, or you've been abused, or whatever. There's so much that introspective art can do in terms of therapy, and finding a way to let that out, whether it's poetry, whether it's drawing, painting, whether it's music, whatever it is. If you're a physical person, as Prime certainly is, if it's getting into sports, if it's just pure exercise, if it's something that Anthony and I love with those obstacle course races like Tough Mudder or Spartan, if it's, something that allows you to connect with yourself more than you ever would have before, that's great. But in addition to the inside part, the introspective part, there is also the idea that you may not even remember how to connect with people. So from that standpoint, a peer support group, and I mean true peers, not just people your age, not just people that have superficial similarities. I'm talking about the real support groups of people that have had similar traumas or similar family backgrounds, or survivors of, whatever it is. And having the proper moderator as a therapist, and really giving yourself the opportunity to heal that way. I think those are the two things. You got to attack it from the inside, attack it from the outside. It's not a kitchen sink approach. It's actually a very targeted approach. And making sure that the person has what they consider to be a safe space where they don't have to worry about just being on the defensive and being angry all the time. That is the best part, because otherwise, even though in comics they show someone like Prime as this unstoppable dynamo that just keeps going with his rage, that's exhausting. It's something that you can't sustain. And when that flame burns out, it's not good. It's not good for anyone. So allowing a person to recharge, finding a way to do it from the inside with whatever skills within therapy that may end up being a fantastic talent, in addition to the external supports, which may initially to the person seem incredibly artificial, but I've seen people develop some pretty strong bonds that way. And it's wonderful when it works out. And allowing the time for it to happen and recognizing that it's not going to be instant, because that's the other thing that happens. The reactivity is that whatever needs to get done is going to get done right away. And if it doesn't, then it's all a failure. That extremism that you mentioned before, you can avoid that if you're able to show that therapy and these different modalities are something that you're willing to stick with in the long, for the long haul. That part is more important than whether or not it's the modality. Because I think sometimes we get caught up so much in, well, what's the exact proper way? That's not nearly as important as doing something and going ahead and experimenting with these different ways to express yourself in a safe system.
Something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. As an extremist myself, I was hearing a lot of what it was that you were saying and feeling personally attacked, but also
you haven't said that in a little while, so okay.
No, I haven't. Not, and I want to be clear here. I'm not seeing comparison between myself and Prime, just knowing that I do have a tendency to go all or nothing, or have an emotional reaction that is all or nothing. I'm a lot better at it than I used to be, but there was a time where I may have reacted not that dissimilarly from a real life Prime, just out of not knowing, not having the experience and the self-awareness and the maturity to meter my responses accordingly. And I think that's something that certainly comes with experience and growth. And the one thing that I want to mention is one of the things that really set Prime off back when this had all originally happened was overhearing, was it Alex or Kal-El? I don't remember. It was one of them saying that about Prime, that he's never going to grow. He's never going to be Superman here in the Paradise Dimension.
Right.
And
yeah, that's a great point.
That really just set him off, this notion that I'm stuck here forever and I can never grow. I can never mature. And so in order for me to get out, I need to just punch my way out. And of course, that led to a whole host of other problems. But I think it's a situation where he was never given the space to grow. He was never given the space to learn. And that's something that we, as real life people, need to be more mindful of, is that we are going to make mistakes. We are going to screw up. And hopefully the overwhelming majority of us are never going to screw up on a level that is going to endanger all of existence. But we may screw up in a way that will damage our existence, our reality, such as it is, meaning the circle over which we have influence. What I think it's important for all of us to take away from this, and maybe some of the lessons that we can learn from the way that Prime handled things, is think about the impacts and think about what the 0 to 60 response would be, and then say, how is that going to be hurtful to those around me? And even if your anger, even if your negative emotions are justified, and I don't think anybody really can argue that Prime's anger isn't at least rooted in some justifiable reason. It's the way in which he expressed it. That's the problem. I think if we can take our justifiable anger, our justifiable emotions, and channel it into a more productive fashion, I think that would, it's certainly going to be beneficial for us as individuals and also us collectively as a society. I think that, but again, that comes with that growth and maturity, and it's learning, okay, last time I got really upset, last time I got really pissed off and I went from 0 to 100 and I had that extreme response. This is how it worked out, or it didn't work out. This is the negative result that happened. But you have to be able and willing to take that moment and that reflection and think about that before you act, which isn't always easy. Self-reflection and self-awareness is not something you can just flick a switch and it happens. It comes over many, many years, but the result is a healthier response and a happier mindset, and the knowledge and the understanding that, okay, I am going to get angry and I'm going to acknowledge it. And then I'm going to say, what am I going to do with that anger? What am I going to do? How am I going to channel it to a productive means? Because we could punch walls, whether they are on the barrier of reality or whether they're in the, inside the room of our house. We can punch walls all day long. That's not going to solve anything. It's what can you do with that anger that shows who you are as a person and how you've grown and how you've matured.
Preach, man. I could listen to you for another 3 or 4 hours saying this.
Well, it came from after, because I've punched walls myself.
Mm-hmm.
Real, actual walls. So I've never punched a wall of reality, but I have punched sheetrock.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in my younger, angstier days.
Mm-hmm.
And I could say, now as a 38-year-old man, I'm not punching walls anymore. It's okay. I acknowledge the anger. What is making me angry?
Mm-hmm.
And what can I do with this anger to have a positive outcome for my life? Because punching walls doesn't get you anything but a bloody, potentially broken fist and a repair bill, especially if you're a renter.
Yeah.
As a homeowner, I'm not punching any walls now because I'm the one who has to fix it. I don't want to have to fix that mess.
Yeah.
Bad enough I have a kid running around making a mess. I don't need to make more messes for myself. So that's the call to action for our listeners this week. We haven't done a call to action in a while. Before you punch a wall, think. Take a second. Think. Why am I angry? What is this anger really about? And can I channel this energy into something positive?
Yep.
So there's your call to action. Don't punch walls. So I think this is a good episode. And I was looking forward to Superboy-Prime for a while because I know he's got a lot of stuff. And I think that this has turned out to be one of our better, more productive episodes in terms of corollaries and things that we can use to help our listeners. But now it's the fun time. And let's see what happens when we get Superboy-Prime on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Superboy. I'm Dr. Issues.
So which Earth are you from?
This one? I didn't know that was a multiple choice question.
So you're a fellow primer.
Is that a thing?
It is to me. That's all that matters. So how do we do this? You tell me how wrong I am and I destroy you, or you tell me how right I am and you join me?
There has to be some sort of middle ground here.
All right. Suit yourself.
Hold it. At least tell me more about what it means to be a primer, if it's so important to you.
Well, it means you're the best. You're number one. Everyone else is jealous, and they can't handle how powerful you are. So they shut you down. They lock you in a lantern tomb or a wall of endless immortal suffering or send you to your room. But you're not some punk kid that can't take care of himself like a spoiled brat. You hear me? It's not like mom can punch a hole in reality, but she gets to set a curfew. Come on. I've seen the future.
That's quite a bit to unpack in just one session. Here, let me make a list.
No. The only list you need to know is how many super powerful beings I've beaten. I'm the baddest man in the universe.
I've noticed you take an argumentative tone even when no one's arguing with you. When did you develop that as a defense mechanism?
The only defense I need is a good offense. I've tried being defensive before, and all it did was get me to try and kill me, but I'm too good for myself. I know that sounds crazy when I say it that way. I'm not nuts. I'm just really pissed off.
Wow. Anger can drive any of us to the point that we're not making rational decisions. How do you cope with that, that level of anger? My goodness.
Punching, heat vision, it's usually really bloody.
That sounds horrifying.
Oh no, it's a rush. I tried doing things other people's way. I don't need to be anybody's lapdog. Everybody thinks that I'm some sort of idiot hothead.
Well, not necessarily an idiot, just a hothead. I mean, I can tell you're really impulsive from what I gather. Ready, fire, aim.
Piss me off and you get crushed. It's not complicated. They're all gunning for me anyway. I don't have to react because I act first.
Well, don't you wonder why you end up being contained repeatedly because you act first? Okay, how about someone like me as a guide? I can help you process the chaos in your life.
Oh, so you're going to help me escape whenever they try and hold me back? Sweet.
That's not what...
I haven't had somebody figure out dimensions for me since Alex. I mean, I don't expect you to have his powers, but you won't need them when you have me whooping everybody.
I'm not trying to...
Listen, if we beat up more lanterns, we can probably get you a ring or something. I mean, that's how that works, right? And the other fake Superman can't stop me from eliminating all the other fake worlds, and then they'll all see just how right I was all along. They'll write it brand new, with me as the center of the universe, as it should be, and I'll have my family right there with Crypto, and then even hotter Lois Lane.
Well, this is taking a strange turn.
Yeah, and I'm going to get somebody to make a movie, but not that Routh guy. He's too stiff. Maybe Cavill. Maybe, kind of beefs up a little bit.
Are you even trying to stay on topic anymore?
Listen, I have big dreams, Doc. This is important. Don't deny me my vision. This is
Quit
the most Excuse you?
I'm sorry. I know you can pulverize me into dust. Look, this is getting ridiculous. You have your vision the way you want reality to be. You don't incorporate anyone else's ideas. You let your anger ride this wave of impulsivity, and it stops you time and time again. Put some guardrails up on this roller coaster. That's why society keeps setting the boundaries for you if you don't do it yourself. Man.
Are you done? You are really excitable. You need to relax, Doc. You know what? I'm not sure I can have you as my second in command. I mean, you're a little quick to fly off the handle. I need a cool hand at the wheel. You should probably meditate like I do.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to insult you. You meditate. You meditate. Okay, I'm game. I'll bite. What is your mantra?
It's a phrase. The universe shall bow before my will, and my enemies will know the one true Superman. Kept me sane for years while I was waiting for the end of existence. Doc, you still there?
I think I felt better when you were angry and ranting.
Well, I got plenty left to...
No, just let's call this progress because you didn't immediately destroy me like I thought you would.
Is this what you were talking about with that whole middle ground thing?
For you, I'll say yes.
And I win again. Just like the whole cosmos will find out as soon as I figure out how to do that without immediately destroying them, like you said.
Thanks. You know, we could set the bar a bit higher by thinking of non-violent.
Don't push it, Doc.
Noted. Okay, so the next session will be in...
Whenever I feel like it. You got that?
Ooh, such a bully. Just like I expected.
What was that?
I said, I hope you know how to deal with bullies because, superheroes will try and get in your way? Oh boy, am I blowing this?
Oh, don't worry. If anybody gets in the way, I'll show them my truth and justice in my fists.
Oh, come on. We're almost done without damage. Damn it!
I think you got through to him?
Well, if I got through to him as powerfully as he got through that wall, then that is a good thing.
Yeah, but, you know, that's the drywall. Plus, he's got experience of punching walls, so you got to think it's not really that big of a deal for him.
Yeah, this is one of those rare times where I had such low expectations that I'll take this as a moral victory.
Okay. Just eat that W then. So that's going to do it for this episode. So recommended reading, which I know we slacked off a little bit on the recommended reading. This time we are going to recommend Final Crisis, Legion of Three Worlds. That's Doc's pick for... What was your reasoning behind that pick for the recommended reading?
Because you get a great overall view of not just how Prime thinks of everyone around him, but you also get a real good glimpse of other characters in the DC universe around the idea that no matter what they're doing in the moment, things may not work out the way they want to. And the way some of your most important heroes process that for themselves is amazing. Plus, Batman does something totally unexpected. All right, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Very cool. So we'll have links to that in the show notes. Amazon affiliate, although I don't know how much longer we're going to be an Amazon affiliate because nobody's bought anything from us. And so they don't let you just continue to be an Amazon affiliate unless you actually sell stuff. So anyway, so the next couple episodes, so we've got Azrael coming up next. Seems to be a good, just a 1-2 punch of DC anti-heroes, you know, turd villainous sort of characters.
Yeah.
Azrael's not quite as extreme as Prime is. I don't think he goes full villain.
Right.
But he does definitely, he is an antagonist. I'll put it that way.
Yep.
And then we are going to be doing North Star. I know we initially said we were going to do Guardian, but we're going to be doing North Star instead because June is Pride Month, and we thought we should cover an LGBTQ character. And so we said, well, let's just shift over slightly from one Alpha Flight character to another. So we're going to be doing North Star, and we will be joined by our good friend Dr. Goku from Guardians MH. It'll be his first appearance on the show. So can't wait to have him discuss we get to have an authentic Canadian play a Canadian. So that'll be cool.
Sweet.
I don't have to worry about doing an accent, eh? And then Raphael from Ninja Turtles. So we're coming back around to another Ninja Turtle character. So we're very much looking forward to that one. That should be a lot of fun. So that's gonna wrap it up for this one. Thank you to everybody who's watching us on the live stream on Facebook and YouTube. You can check us out again. We record typically on Saturday nights, so you can join our Facebook page and get our links there. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel or our Twitter page. All of the links will be available on there. You can also subscribe to our Discord, and again, links to all these will be in the show notes. But thank you to everybody who is watching right now. I know Chad from Perfect Package Podcast is in the chat right now. He said he's very excited because he wants to watch Doc pun live.
Wow.
So I know we've got, so don't screw up now, because now you've got pressure to come up with a really funny pun for the end of the episode.
Huh.
But you can go to our TeePublic page. As we mentioned a couple times, we've got our new Why Because Comics merch is available on the site, as well as our logo. So you can check out all sorts of cool stuff that you can get, continue to support the show. We have our Patreon, patreon.com/Capes on the Couch, and you can subscribe and get some additional exclusive content. We just did the Wicked and the Divine review, and all of our episodes are available on our website at capesonthecouch.live or capesonthecouch.com. And you can email us at capesonthecouch@gmail.com with any questions. And don't forget to rate, subscribe, and leave a review if you are checking us out on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. So we will be reading some reviews on the show if you go and leave us a wonderful review or leave us a bad review. At least we know that you've been listening. So that's going to do it for me, Doc.
Well, I'm just glad I didn't have to be derivative with anything in this episode, because if you're not willing to deal with the prime adversities in your life, then you won't be able to function.
Wow, you went math on it. Okay, I respect that.
True nerd, man.
You're dropping science while I'm dropping English. So, for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.